Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're watching Out Here in the Redwoods. I'm your host, Denise Riles. And for everyone here, aloha means hello and goodbye. Come out wherever you are. And I am very pleased this evening to introduce you to a woman of grit. A candidate for District Attorney's Office, Elan Firpo. Aloha!
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you for stopping by. Gives us a chance to get to know the real you. I know you're a very busy lady, and the last time we talked, you had some grapes and a little bit of cheese. Girl, you need to eat.
I don't have much time, but true, yes, I do.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from?
Sure. I moved up here in the 80s with my family. My father is a retired CHP, but he moved up here to transfer to the Garberville office.
Oh, nice.
So I lived in Redway for a little while, and then I moved to Eureka. I went to college at Redwoods, and I worked at Humboldt Title. And then I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. So I transferred to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, where I got an engineering degree. And then I worked in the high-tech industry. I designed magnetic recording heads in Santa Barbara. And with the design of the magnetic recording heads, we would transfer it to manufacturing in Asia, and then from manufacturing in Asia to customer facilities in Europe and sometimes the East Coast.
Right.
So I would have a product line that was being manufactured in 3 different places around the world at the same time, and I would manage the product the whole time, and modifications and testing and tolerancing and specifications and such. So I did that, and I had a great time, and I learned a lot about management and budgets and resources and the importance of making the best of what you have. And I did that for a while, really had a great time, but then I had my kids, and I didn't want to travel anymore.
Right.
So I decided I needed to find a second career, and I sat down and thought about it, and I wanted to do something that was more than making money. I wanted to make a difference in people's lives and feel like I was contributing something. So I went to law school at night so that I could be a prosecutor. My father's retired highway patrol, but so is my grandfather, and my mother is a retired dispatcher, and my sister's a correctional officer, and I have another sister that's a dispatcher. So that type of public service has always been in my family. So I went to law school so I could become a prosecutor, and the only place I ever applied was to the Humboldt County District Attorney's Office because I wanted to come home to being near my parents and to bring my children to my parents. So I've been here since 2009. I've been just about exactly 5 years working in the prosecutor's office for Paul. I started as an entry-level misdemeanor deputy, but he saw that the more he gave me to do, the more I could prove myself. He gave me opportunities, and so I've gone in 5 years from entry-level to being the senior felony prosecutor in the office.
Wow. Well, how do you balance your time? How did you do the law school at night with your children?
You know, and I worked my way through school when I was an engineer. It's just my way. I just work hard all the time, and I'm thinking about what I can do next and what I can do more. Even now in my job as a prosecutor, one of the reasons I decided to run for district attorney is as a prosecutor, I was always looking for better ways and looking for more I can do and how to be more informed, looking at grant applications and looking at being involved in the community so I could know more about what I am doing in the courtroom.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important. Life is short. You know, you should do the very best you have with whatever you're working on, and that's always been my motto, and I'm applying it now too.
That's a good question, and I don't think people really ask themselves, or at least I haven't. As a voter, you kind of go in and go, well, that person has been there for a while, check. But what in the world does a district attorney do? What does that involve? And why should we matter? Why should it matter to us?
That's a very good question, and I think a lot of people have that question. It's a district attorney is the prosecutor for the county. So if anybody commits a crime, it goes through my office. My office prosecutes the person to hold them accountable. So it's sort of like if you needed an attorney for something, you would ask your friends around and find out which attorney you wanted. The district attorney is the attorney for the whole community.
Okay.
So it's the attorney that represents you as a citizen. It's the attorney that represents you if you're the victim of a crime.
Huh. I never thought about it that way. That makes sense.
So you're really hiring an attorney to protect your best interests as a community member. And so the things to look for, one thing is how long has a person been a trial attorney? That's one thing.
Okay.
But the district attorney should be managing a group of trial attorneys. The district attorney shouldn't necessarily be the most experienced trial attorney, because what you want is someone that understands the law, understands the cases in the community, and then can understand how to manage a group of qualified trial attorneys. One of the issues you see is that people say, well, I've been a prosecutor for 20 years and therefore I'm the most qualified. But you're not shopping for a prosecutor, you're shopping for a district attorney to manage the entire office and to make decisions for the entire community.
Wow. What's the hardest decision somebody has to make in that office that you've seen? Like Mr. Gallegos. What do you know what kind of the tough decisions he's got to make?
Well, we have to make tough decisions all the time because we have to prioritize what we're doing. And it's a matter of the crime is committed or alleged to have been committed, and then we take the facts and apply them to the law and see if we can prove it. And there are times that are very heartbreaking where a crime has occurred, there's been a genuine victim, damage has been done, but the elements of the crime aren't met. And so there's things that feel like justice to us as citizens. You know, you feel like if you know, there's been a violent crime committed that the person should pay a high penalty for it, but that's just not necessarily the case under the law. For instance, people that are killed in vehicular manslaughter that have to do with DUI, the sentencing penalty for that is not very strict. It's 246, so the most you can get is 6 years. But somebody was killed, so that doesn't really feel like justice. And that's the hardest part of what we do, is that even though we have the authority of law, even though we have the authority to prosecute people, we don't always get results that feel like justice to us, and that's difficult because we have to communicate that to the victims and to the community.
Wow.
But then there are other days, I just want to say, there are other days that we can do justice, we can help people, we can find people that are addicts, that we work with them and get them through a program and they get their life back and become part of the community. Or there are people that have been victims of violent crime that just show so much honor and integrity in the way they deal with it. That sometimes I'm very humbled by my job and just feel like it's just an act of grace that I get to do my job and work with people. So we make very tough decisions, and there are low times, but there are also some very gratifying times in this job.
I'm glad to hear that, because that keeps you going, those moments where you go, yeah, got my man, ah! But in that office, as you've been working there, is there something that you would change yourself? And what would you like to keep the same? What's working?
Oh, well,
what's working?
There's a lot of things I'd like to change, but there are things that are working. Paul has a very good sense of justice and equal protection under the law, so nobody's above the law. We prosecute everybody regardless of their situation in life. If they've committed a crime, then we'll prosecute them. There's no special exceptions under the law. So Paul does that very well. And Paul had this case called Skilled Health Care, where he prosecuted all the nursing homes in Humboldt County because
I was watching that one. And
that one was very important because it required Paul to initiate against an entire organization. It wasn't just a matter of we got a police report and what are we going to do with it. It required leadership for him to see that our elders needed protection they weren't getting, and to hold the retirement facilities or the nursing facilities responsible. And that became a multi-county case. It initiated here with Paul, but it involved multiple counties from California in the end, and it generated jobs. It generated positions in our office, and it generated jobs at the nursing facilities because they had to be fully staffed after Paul won that case. So that looking out for the community, that type of prosecution is very important, and Paul's done it very well. But in the last 2 years, we've seen realignment, which is the prisons being shut down, and that has brought people back in the community that would normally be in prisons. And I'm the only candidate that's currently in the office, and I'm the only candidate that has been working since realignment. And I understand that we need to prioritize the caseload so that some people need to be in custody. People that are a danger to society need to be in custody. So if a person has committed a crime repeatedly, it's got to a point where we shouldn't be offering them a plea deal anymore. We should be just having them plead as charged and keeping them in custody. So that's a thing I'd like to see more often. There's a very small group of the population that's preying on the rest of us, and they normally would be in prison. You know, and I'm talking 50 to 75 people that are dramatic repeat offenders, that are breaking into homes and cars. And if we could take them and keep them in custody, I think that we would see that as a community we'd feel more comfortable and more safe. So I want to stop giving them plea deals, stop offering them probation, and offer them just their right to a speedy jury trial, which they're entitled to, and keep them in custody.
What is your opinion? Because speaking of community, there's been an outrage about the midnight release. What's your opinion on that? Is there something we can do?
There's got to be something we can do. There's no logical, sensible reason to let people out in the middle of the night. And I've been looking into it, and there's a few elements of that policy that just don't make sense. Between midnight and 5 a.m., people should be able to stay in custody. There's no bus service.
Yeah.
They're mostly released with they have no cash when they're released.
Right.
They get a check if they had any cash with them. If they have a credit card, they might be able to get a taxi, but a lot of them can't. So we need to, as a county, find a way to keep people in custody between midnight and 5 a.m. It just doesn't make sense. It's not fair to them. It's cruel and unusual in a way, and it's not safe for the community.
Yeah. And have you, while working with Paul Gallegos, do you have any opinions or ideas about how to bring the community and law enforcement better working together to kind of help reduce our crime? I'm understanding that with our population, we're number one up there. Go Humboldt. You gotta love that. Do you have any ideas about that? How we can work better together? And
Sure. Well, the number of property crimes have increased dramatically, and again, I think that goes back to realignment.
Yeah.
So what I want to do as district attorney is work with law enforcement, particularly EPD, the sheriffs, APD, and find a way to strategize and use our resources so that we can keep certain people in custody, like I already said.
Yeah.
And if we kept those certain people in custody, our property crime rates would drop dramatically. I would also like to take deputies from my office, the deputy district attorneys, and assign them to law enforcement agencies.
Oh, now that's an interesting idea.
So while I've been campaigning, I've gone all over the county. I've been Garberville, Hoopa, Shelter Cove, everywhere far and wide. And I find that Eureka Police Department has completely different issues and concerns than, for instance, Garberville CHP.
Well, that does make sense. We're bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amongst other things, we're bigger.
Yeah.
So if we had a deputy district attorney appointed to the agency, that deputy could go to their briefing meetings, could talk to the officers, could be available by text and phone for the officers if they have questions when they're in the field.
Nice.
And that way we could build those relationships between my office and law enforcement. And the deputies from my office could report back in a meeting and say, this is what's really a concern to EPD, or EPD's about to do a crackdown on this type of crime and we need to support them in that. So we could build those sort of relationships. And I think as we build those sort of relationships, we'll see the community become more involved and more satisfied with the level of service they're getting.
Good. I have to ask, why now? Why are you throwing your hat in the ring? What was that conversation like with you and your children when you decided, I'm going to do this? What is that makes you do this?
Well, my children are thrilled. My children are just thrilled. And it became apparent to me that Paul was not going to run again. Okay. And I just feel like with my management experience, again, I have so many great ideas on how we can do a better job with our resources that we currently have, and how we could take a plan to the Board of Supervisors, a genuine plan about a budget, articulating how we're going to get grant positions. I'd like to do vertical prosecution. So now,
what does that mean?
Right now I'm a general prosecutor. I prosecute everybody that commits a felony whose last name falls between D and J, every felony. So I would like my office to have vertical prosecutors so that someone's assigned to just prosecute, for instance, domestic violence cases. And someone's assigned to just prosecute methamphetamine and heroin sales, for instance.
Which we have a lot of.
So that person would become a specialist and an expert in the field. The prosecution of that type of crime would be standardized. Instead of jumping from deputy to deputy in my office, it would be the same deputy who would make the same offers and the same dispositions across the board. And it would free up the generalist prosecutors to spend more time with their victims and on their cases. So right now, my office has 11 prosecutors, and my vision is to have 20 prosecutors.
Is that doable?
That is completely doable. If we had vertical prosecutors, I need 6 vertical prosecutors, and I could get grant positions to partially fund those. Okay. And then build the office one person at a time by going to the Board of Supervisors and telling them what I need and why I need them.
Nice.
And I'm confident that if the Board of Supervisors had an articulate plan and a budget, that they would feel confident investing in the district attorney's office, because of course they want to have a good prosecution and the protection of the community. So I want to give them a reason to feel confident to invest in us, and I think we can do that.
Nice. Now, what would your advice be to a new prosecutor? Do you remember your first time in the courtroom?
I do remember my first time in
What
the
was
courtroom.
that like?
It was very exciting.
Yeah.
It was very exciting. I think my tendency is to be kind of quiet and watch and learn. So I think I started out kind of quiet and watch and learn. One of the most important things for new prosecutors is that they have life experience.
Okay.
Because really, you have to remind yourself it's sort of there, but for the grace of God, go I with most of the people you're dealing with. Most of the defendants just have no good choices in life. They're struggling with whatever they're struggling with. We want to help them so that this brush with criminal law is their last. Ideally, we would do something to help them understand that they can do better with their life. That's our objective. So it's not a matter of good people versus bad people. It's a matter of finding justice for everybody. So to a new prosecutor, I would hope that they have the life experience to acknowledge that and to recognize that. They can see the value of all humans.
Nice.
And they can recognize that they represent the people of the state of California, which is everybody, which includes the defendant. And their rights are very important. And we need to be sure that their rights are protected because that's all of our rights. Any one person who has their rights in jeopardy is jeopardizing all of our rights. So to a new prosecutor, I would say it's very important to understand the law. It's very important to stand up for yourself and prosecute to the full extent. And it's very important to use justice and keep justice in mind. This isn't vengeance. This isn't vigilantism. We're trying to do what's best for the community as a whole.
Nice. Is there one case that sticks out for you among others after all of this time?
There is one. I had a case that it was child sexual abuse, and a man had been grooming children, and I received the case at the last minute, honestly, and
which happens.
Which happens.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
And the boy that had been victimized took the stand, and it was very painful. And at the end, there was the jury. One person said that they thought child sexual abuse was an urban myth and they would never convict a person for it. So
An urban myth?
An urban myth. So that person had kind of snuck into the jury and it caused a mistrial, so I had to try it again.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when the victim was victimized, he was 8, and when I did the trial the second time, he was 18.
Oh my
So
God.
10 years
really?
had gone
That
by.
much time went by.
But it was still important to that victim to
Yeah.
stand up for themselves
Yeah.
and to get their truth heard and to feel vindicated. So we fought. The victim did it. You know, I did my best under the law, but really it was the credit to the victim that did it. And the person was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison, which is where he should be because he groomed small children. So, you know, and that was very satisfying for me. That was a case, it felt like it was the first 4 years of my career I was prosecuting that case. It was incredibly satisfying when the jury came back with a guilty verdict and he was sentenced so that he won't bother anybody for a good long time.
Wow. And we do have, and that's another thing, we do have predators in our area. Is there something that we can do to kind of streamline that and know where they are at all times, pretty much? I know we have the check-in system.
Yeah, there's Megan's Law, and
Right.
they're called 290 registrants.
Right.
They're people that have committed sex crimes, and they're required to register
Yeah.
by law. Of course, people can look up Megan's Law on the internet and see who lives near them, what addresses. It's very public. And I can tell you that law enforcement does as good a job as they could possibly do of keeping track of those 290 registrants. And when they fail to register, we do prosecute them. But yeah, there are predators in our midst, and it's my job as a prosecutor to keep them under control as best we can.
Right. And man your people. Man the people. Now, another question I have is, you're up against 2 other candidates.
3.
3. 3 more. 3 besides yourself. What makes you my better lawyer? What makes you? What about you that I should choose?
Well, of the 4 of us, I'm the only one that still works in the office. The other 3 quit the office.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's telling because they all 3 have stated publicly that the office is understaffed and it's a hardship to work there. And I don't disagree with that statement. The office is understaffed and it's a hardship to work there. But I think it's very important to the community that we do this work. And all 3 of the other ones were senior prosecutors, and they could have taken a leadership role and tried to change things from within. But instead they all quit and went on to do work that paid better and was easier to do. So I think that's a separating factor. I'm determined to provide prosecutors to this community to make this a better place. I lived here in the 80s. I live a block and a half now from where I lived in 1985.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen how the community has not flourished in the way that it should. And I really want to make this a better place for my children and my parents. I have two different sets of people that I feel responsible for. And Humboldt County is so beautiful. Our environment here is so beautiful. It really ought to be the case that we feel safe and comfortable here. So there's that sets me apart. And then the other thing, of course, is this is my second career. The other three candidates have all just been prosecutors or attorneys. Well, they've all just been attorneys.
Right.
A couple of them have also been defense attorneys. But I'm the only one that has a second career, where I spent my first career in management and engineering. Engineering makes me a decision maker, a problem solver, a person that can see a complicated situation and find the best solution to make the best of what limited resources we have. The other ones have prosecutorial experience, which is important, but only a small part of the puzzle.
Right.
And then I'm the only candidate that's worked in the office under realignment and seen the way that's changed. Yeah. Because it used to be you could say, okay, you're pleading guilty and we're going to send you to San Quentin for 2 years. And that's not even an option anymore. You're sending people, it's called on the bus, on a big green bus, out of town, get them out of the community, ship them out. That's not even an option anymore. It has to be a serious or violent felony, or they have to have committed so many prior felonies that they're not eligible for probation. Otherwise, they're staying here.
Oh, wow.
And so we need to have a vision on how to prosecute the cases with that in mind, that the people are staying here. We no longer have the option of just shipping them out. We have to give them service, we have to give them treatment, we have to prioritize who's going to be in our jail, because the jail is a limited resource itself.
Right.
So someone needs to manage that big picture. It's no longer a matter of just prosecuting and sending people out of town on a bus.
See, people don't know this.
No,
I'm
why
glad
would
we're
you?
talking about it. Where do you get your drive from? Does all of your family have this kind of drive and determination and chutzpah?
I'm going to say yes. You should meet my mother. She's loved by all and has her finger in 15 projects at a time. Yeah.
And what, did you impart this to your children?
I hope so.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're very enthusiastic about me in this campaign.
Right.
And I'm participating, and my boy has been all over the place wearing his Firpo buttons and just thrilled. So I'm excited about it.
Oh, good. I love this. This has been a wonderful conversation so far. I just love getting to know you. I have to say, I'm going to say this, people. You look like those heroines I read in some of my books. The very pretty detective going to get her man. I just have to say that. I don't want to embarrass you, but you are a fun lady. Now, you've been out on the campaign trail. What is the most exciting thing about being on the campaign trail? And you just had a debate the other night.
That was exciting.
Yeah?
That was pretty exciting. But being on the campaign trail has been very interesting. Like I said, I've been to all these different divergent communities. I'm listening to them and their particular concerns. There's a lot of different concerns across the entire county. But several themes repeat. One is meth. There's a dramatic concern about meth addiction, meth sales. So we need to focus on that and address that. Marijuana. People, I think, have got to the point where they want to see the criminal element of marijuana be the focus, not the plant. Whether it's a tomato plant or a marijuana plant, that doesn't even matter anymore. People are tired of damage to the environment, diverting of resources, killing animals, and the way that crime has been attracted to our community because of marijuana.
Yes.
So what I would like to see is people that when they're victims of violent crime, because every harvest season people come from out of our community and victimize growers. They commit home invasion robberies and assaults, and the victims oftentimes don't report anything because they don't want to get in trouble for their marijuana grow, which has become worse and worse every harvest season. So I would like to find a way that we can work with the community so that we can work with people that have grows and still have them report their crimes against them, because the crimes against them are a public safety issue for all of us.
That's correct.
And we need to address that. Marijuana is eventually going to be legalized. So we need to just be proactive about our public safety issues, not so concerned and focused and obsessed really with marijuana, because that's not the problem anymore.
Right.
We need to focus on the grows that are causing damage, and whether it's a huge grow that's causing damage or even a moderate-sized grow that's causing damage. It's the damage that's the problem,
Yeah.
not the size of the grow necessarily.
Yeah, because they're hiding some of the generators, which get the diesel into the water
ground,
and
right.
the fertilizer into the water, which isn't good for us at
No.
all. We're drinking that stuff.
Right, and with the drought that we've just had, the people are going to be diverting water more than ever, and with reduced flow, we're going to see more algae grows because we're just going to see more fertilizer. You know, it's an ongoing problem, and we need to address the impact on our environment.
That's correct.
Not so much the marijuana.
Exactly. And we just had a conversation a few weeks ago with some owners of a dispensary. And boy, did I learn the benefits of cannabis in different ways. I didn't realize it could be a soap, a solve. Yeah,
All kinds of things.
Yeah.
And see, we need a vertical prosecutor for marijuana because that person in my office should be an expert. Because we
You
have the
know.
cooperatives and the collaboratives, and there's so many areas of the law that vary across the state. That one prosecutor in my office should be an expert and able to respond on all theories of law on marijuana
Yeah.
and determine whether it's a legal 215 grow or if it's outside the bounds or what the people can do to become legal,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right. And we need that because I'm understanding in Colorado, they're making money.
They're making
And in
money.
Los Angeles, they're making money. We could do stuff with that.
Mm-hmm.
We could do stuff with that.
And it's concerning to me that legitimate businesses have to do environmental impact studies, they
Yeah.
pay taxes, this thing and the other. But because marijuana is illegal, there's no standard held to those.
Right.
So it's not fair to legitimate business owners either.
Yeah.
So we need to address it head on
Yeah.
and stop just waiting for it to happen to us. We as a Humboldt County need to address marijuana and find a way to protect our citizens from what needs protection, which is not necessarily the green leafy plant itself.
That's correct. And what about, speaking of drugs, which leads me to homelessness, how do we protect them? They have rights.
You know,
What do we do about them?
those cases just require more handling than some other cases. I just had a jury trial where a homeless person was nearly stabbed to death.
Oh my goodness.
And he was hitchhiking, and somebody picked him up, and the person that picked him up was, you know, an average middle-class guy, but was having a mental breakdown and almost killed the homeless fellow.
Oh my
So
God.
we used a victim witness advocate in my office. I worked with law enforcement. We kept track of that fellow, the victim, so that he could take the stand and testify, because his rights are just as important as everybody else's rights.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that he's as protected as could be.
Yeah. Because
So-
like my man Vince, I talked to him on the street corner. Wonderful guy. But he's been beaten by other homeless guy. You know, he needs protection. You're right.
Yeah, it's been my experience that the victims, homeless tend to be the victims of crime.
Yeah.
People that perpetrate crime usually are couch surfing or something. They have an addiction issue. Usually victims of crime are homeless, and the homeless commit crimes against each other. I don't often see homeless people committing crimes in the community.
No, you're right. You're right. Because my personal break-ins, I have to tell you, twice this year in my house, they were looking for money for meth.
Yeah, for drugs, yeah.
Yeah. And what do you do as a DA, or can you? Because in that situation, I had an officer, well, really, guy?
Yeah, it's tough.
What do we do about that?
As citizens, the best thing you can do as a citizen is form a neighborhood watch. And it
We
sounds
got that.
old-fashioned,
We got that, yeah.
but it's important. And
Yeah.
that's important because you can't have just one neighbor looking out the window and calling in on other people. That one neighbor becomes a snitch. But when the whole neighborhood works together, they have power in numbers. And then another thing that's really effective is security video. If I receive an evidence video of the person in color breaking into the window and then leaving again in color with a backpack full of stuff, you know, that case I can prove.
Oh, good.
If they didn't leave any fingerprints, they took things, broke things, but I don't know who did it, that's very, very difficult.
Right.
And even if we find the stolen property, that's possession of stolen property. I still can't prove they were the people that broke into the house.
That's true.
So as a citizen, it's frustrating. And again, this is where my job gets hard,
Yeah.
because what's the justice in that? That doesn't feel like justice.
Yeah.
But neighborhood watch, security cameras, good locks on your door, a barking dog, you know, the good old-fashioned things still work.
Yeah.
And knowing that we are doing our best. And again, it's a very small percentage of the population that commits most of those crimes.
Yeah.
If we could keep those few people in custody, I think you would find that there's far less property crimes in Humboldt County.
Well, Ms. Firpo, You have some great ideas. And I wish you every best of luck. Ladies and gentlemen, call if you want to support Ms. Firpo. Grab a sign for your lawn. Why not? If you don't vote, somebody else will. Thank you very much, Elan.
Thank you.
It's been great having you here. For Out Here in the Redwoods, I'm Denise Riles, and aloha means hello and goodbye. See you next time.